He really wants to calm Trump down, make big promises, make it seem like he's making big concessions. But in the meeting with Zelensky, it won't be a concession at all. It will mean surrender of territory that's very dear to Ukraine, that Zelensky won't be able to sell to his own people. And then Putin can say, see, I'm the reasonable guy. Zelensky is the unreasonable one. You should be my friend and not Ukraine's friend. And potentially abandon Ukraine to Russia's predations.
Donald Trump has said, Putin won't mess around with me, with some degree of confidence. Is he right?
I think what Vladimir Putin is trying to do is to put Trump on trying to put Zelensky on the defensive, actually. So he's going to try to sound as reasonable as he can and jangle promises of business deals and an arms control agreement to then make Zelensky have to make concessions that he knows Zelensky won't make. And that way, Trump, who has promised this meeting with Zelensky and Putin, puts Zelensky in an impossible position. Zelensky will have to refuse, and Putin can continue his war.
But Donald Trump wants peace, doesn't he?
I think what Trump wants is he wants to get to business with Russia, and he doesn't care what has to happen for that to happen. So he would like Zelensky to either give up or to give Russia what it wants. I think he really wants a Nobel Peace Prize. I think Putin has understood that, and that's why he's talking about an arms control agreement. But I think Putin sees a real opportunity for this meeting to put Zelensky on the defensive.
And it's very difficult for Zelensky because he obviously won't be at that meeting. Right. There were quite a lot of reassurances made yesterday by the US president to the European leaders because they had that virtual meeting, Germany, France, the UK, Donald Trump, to sort of petition the US president. And they did get some assurances from Trump. He said there would be sort of no decision over sort of a ceasefire or borders without Ukraine being part of those conversations. Do you believe the president when he says that?
Well, what I believe is that Trump and Putin are going to have a conversation. Trump is going to think that what Putin is saying is reasonable and then try to invite Zelensky into a separate meeting. And Zelensky is going to realize this was a trap. So that's what Putin wants to do. He really wants to calm Trump down, make big promises, make it seem like he's making big concessions. But in the meeting with Zelensky, it won't be a concession at all. It will mean surrender of territory that's very dear to Ukraine, that Zelensky won't be able to sell to his own people. And then Putin can say, see, I'm the reasonable guy. Zelensky is the unreasonable one. You should be my friend and not Ukraine's friend. And potentially abandon Ukraine to Russia's predations.
What I'm hearing is that you have got very muted expectations for tomorrow.
I'm really concerned. I really think Putin, everything he has said in the wind up to this meeting indicates that he has really assessed Trump's weaknesses, and he's going to go hit those weaknesses as hard as he can.
You used the word reasonable. It feels like an unusual word for us to be using because it doesn't really feel like anything is reasonable when you see what's happened to Ukraine in the last 3.5, 4 years or so. But what do you think would be a reasonable deal that they could come to, maybe if not tomorrow, but lay the groundwork for?
I mean, an actual reasonable deal would mean freezing the battlefront where it is, perhaps some minor territorial swaps on a temporary measure to try to stabilize the front line, kick the idea of unification with Crimea down the road. Don't give up on it, but put it off. Similar to how, in the Cold War, we didn't insist on East and West Germany being reunited right away. We waited until there was the right time for that. So I think if they can kick Crimea into the long weeds, they can stabilize the battlefront, and they can have a ceasefire with real security guarantees for Ukraine that Russia would not be able to reinvade, would not be able to use a period of time to rearm itself and just do February 2022 all over again, this time with more arms, this time with better weapons, and this time really wipe out Kiev. If they could actually bargain for a real stable peace, then, with security guarantees for Ukraine, then perhaps something can happen. But I just feel like Putin is going to try to put Trump in the position where Trump thinks he got a good deal. Zelensky's not going to accept, either because of permanent surrender of Crimea or something else like that. And that'll be that. And then Putin can say, see, it's Ukraine's fault. It's not my fault. And then Trump will go ahead and do what he wanted to do all along, which is make deals with Putin, both economic and on arms control and on other issues.
Those security guarantees that you talk about, I mean, there have been security guarantees already offered to Ukraine. It's things like continued provision of security assistance, intelligence sharing. The UK run training exercises for Ukrainian forces. But a guarantee What involvement do you think that would mean from, let's say, the UK, France, Germany, that supposed coalition of the willing? What would a guarantee mean in an event of a ceasefire if Russia decided to violate it? What would then be, do you think, the appropriate level of commitment from the countries who say, we will help guarantee Ukraine's security?
I hate to say it, but I mean, I think you have to go back to Macron's proposal of actual European peacekeepers near the front lines to try to keep the peace and to demonstrate to Russia that if they invade, they're not just fighting Ukrainian forces, but they're actually fighting the forces of the UK or France or other European countries. That's what a real positive security assurance is the guarantee that you will come to the defense of the country if attacked. And really, I think that's the only way to get Russia to not re-attack Ukraine would be if they really thought that they were going to go up against one or more NATO countries. And in theory, there should be no problem with having foreign troops on Ukrainian territory, in Ukrainian controlled territory. And then it puts the onus on Russia. If they attack, they will be up against NATO forces.
How likely is it, do you think, that some agreement like that would be agreed?
I mean, so that's like the best hope, is that Putin does agree to some sort of stabilization of the front lines. And Trump basically says, well, this is up to Europe to handle now in terms of peacekeeping forces and things like that. And again, because they would only be on Ukrainian territory and they would only fight if directly engaged by Russian forces, it really raises the bar for Russia. It really says to Russia, like, this is actually going to be a stable front line for as long as the Europeans can commit to it. So likelihood, I think that would mean that Putin doesn't succeed in getting all of what he wants. I think it would mean Trump holding kind of a hard line with Putin in terms of an actual territorial freeze and again, some minor swaps, but not permanently giving up on Ukrainian territory. And then the Europeans really stepping up and being willing to. And, Macron has said he would. I think the UK might actually do something like this if it meant a stable peace and we just don't have another invasion in a year or 2 or 6 months after Russia manages to replenish its forces and re-attack Ukraine, which is certainly something that they hope to do.
Which is clearly one of the big fears, and that's what the UK Prime Minister is trying to help assure Zelensky won't happen. But of course, all of the mechanics of that not yet worked out. You've talked about the fact that Donald Trump and Putin, to some extent, are very keen to put sort of business at the forefront, and that Putin potentially has some tactics he might be trying. He sort of indicated he wants to pursue a new nuclear weapons agreement with the US president. Tell us more about that.
So this has been a sore spot for Trump for a long time. He doesn't like that President Obama got a Nobel Prize for the New START treaty. And so I'm sure he would love to negotiate his own bigger, better treaty with Vladimir Putin so that he can put himself forward. And again, this is something that Putin has kind of said, in the run up to this, dangling this out there as a possibility. Trump has been thinking about arms control since the 80s, which is really kind of remarkable when you think about it.
So what's Putin suggesting? Sorry.
So I think what Putin would suggest is a bigger, better arms control deal, maybe a cap on all nuclear warheads, not just strategic offensive arms, which is what the New START treaty covered. This is something that Trump in the first administration tried to negotiate, but really started way too late in the administration to get a solid agreement, and it fell apart over verification. So I think Putin really knows where Trump is in terms of arms control and can put together a proposal, not just on strategic offensive arms, but on all Russian and US nuclear weapons, and even promise to try to talk to the Chinese without committing to anything. And that'll just sound like something so big and so beautiful that Trump might actually go for it.
Yeah, I mean, Zelensky is sort of waving a flag, a red flag, to say, don't be distracted by the sort of sweeteners that Putin may potentially be offering. And yet it looks like some kind of business or trade is certainly on the agenda for President Putin when that meeting comes tomorrow.
I agree. And, it's really wild because exactly 1 month from now, a Russian exercise called Zapad, which is Russian for West, will be taking place in Belarus. And Russia and Belarus have said this will involve nuclear planning. And so, we're going to see one of the most menacing Russian exercises in a long time in Belarus 1 month from now. And so that also kind of underlies everything that's going to happen tomorrow. And how will Trump react to seeing, after he agrees to some kind of deal with Putin, after they agree to have some kind of nuclear talks, to see Russia, threatening nuclear strikes again in this large-scale exercise in Belarus? It's a very strange time.
William, thank you very much. William Alberque, the former director of NATO's Arms Control, Disarmament and WMD Non-Proliferation Centre. Thank you.